The President's New Year message is where we're keeping our focus this morning. Let's quickly go to Abuja with Ajuri for that.
Thank you, Gimba. Standing by with us is the former Minister of Education and a former Vice President of the World Bank and now a co-convener of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign or group, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. You're very welcome to the program, Madam.
Thank you very much, Ajuri.
Now, you know, we have a lot to get into because the President had a lot to say on New Year's Day. And before we get into infrastructure, I really want to start from restructuring. Because we know that historically over time, this debate has gone on. So on the one hand, you have people saying we just need to completely reconstruct the house, if you will, bring in a brand new structure. Another person will say we need a new process. The President made his view known that he believes we need a new process. Now, one of the things that comes to mind when we think about restructuring is that when we look at kind of how the government has been shaped over the last maybe 2 decades, whether in the judiciary, we've seen justice subverted by corruption. In the legislature, we've seen corruption really kind of riddle the processes that are supposed to be, function to oversight and all of these other things, lawmaking. In the executive, we've seen the same thing. At the state and local level, we see local governments having been reduced almost to an extra bank account for governors. So many problems. Now, is it structure or is it process?
I think that the answer to that question is dependent on the evidence that supports any part of the argument. And I think that we're not doing that. We're not using analytical evidence as a basis for advancing what we should be doing. And I think that the answer is not binary. In other words, it's not either or. It really is about looking at the entirety of the structure that we have. Has the structure that we have delivered the optimal level of governance progress that we should have at this time in our national history? That's an important question. And then we need to find the indicators that suggest, that would enable us deduce that, as a matter of fact, we have been able to produce what we should in terms of the kind of quality of life that governance is all about. Then we need to say to ourselves, if that structure isn't really delivering, there must be something about it that needs to be looked at in a holistic manner. And then we need to, in the looking at the structure, you would find all the processes and how they interconnect. Because you govern a society, a physical territory of a country, and the people within the country, you govern them as though you were governing a system. It's exactly the same way that the body functions. So you can't simply say, we don't have a structural problem, we have a process problem. And you can't say, we don't have a process problem, we have a structural problem, without being like a medical doctor that needs diagnostics. You know, the medical doctor just doesn't say to you, I think you have headache. There are certain indicators that they need to look at. And then they realize that your headache is actually just a symptom, and that there are deeper issues that are creating the basis for the headache. And that if you merely treated headache, the time frame would be too short for the patient.
It's a very interesting perspective, and one that you don't usually hear, the notion that you really have to kind of look at both structure and the process. And one of the things that comes to mind is, you mentioned the issue of diagnostics, working with measurables, working with tangibles. Now, let's look at some of those. When you look at budget performance, just for an example, if that's going to be one of the indicators, from like 1999, really kind of up to about 2014, 2015, 2016, you would see abysmal budget performance. You would see budgets of well over $1 trillion, $2 trillion, $3 trillion, but then you find out that the actual funds allocated and actually spent in terms of capex has been very, very low. In fact, I think it was just 2 years ago, 2016, that we had the highest capex ever recorded. Does that not speak to a very deep problem of process, how things are done and how development is ultimately delivered to the grassroots?
Just looking at the indicators of economic performance of our country, you will know that we have a structural problem. We have a massive structural problem. Structural problems show up as low productivity and poor competitiveness. So we have these two things, and these two things can stagnate the real progress that you need. Real progress in economic development is, of course, that you improve the household incomes. You raise people from one level of productivity to a higher level of productivity. You shift people from low productivity activities to higher productivity activities. We don't have that, showing up very well. Now, to the specific matter of budget performance, if you looked at that, you would even just simply be looking at a symptom. The real issue is, what quantum of investment do we need as a country on an annual basis in order to position us as a country with the right combination of infrastructure system, human capital system, and the institutional system, as well as the integration of all of these, underpinned through the existence of the rule of law and the justice system? Do we have it? In terms of quantum of investment that we should have, take infrastructure. We really should be investing between 28 to 30 trillion into infrastructure annually. The major investor in infrastructure is the federal government, and it's just at about 2.5 trillion in nominal numbers. If you looked at actual, which is what you're getting at, execution of that infrastructure budget, we have seldom been able to go beyond some 50% of performance on an annualized average basis. So our problems are deeper than we are admitting. And the only way for everyone to be on the same page is really a level of governance transparency that tells us the way we really are. And the best way to do that is to use numbers.